Hello and welcome to another Game Nexus video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the console versions of X-Men vs. Street Fighter. First we're going to be taking a look at the PlayStation version. Sadly all I have is the disc only. I'd gotten this from a friend back in the day and my friend never held on to the case or manual, but hey, the disc is fully functional, so why not? If you see here, that's X-Men vs. Street Fighter on the Sony PlayStation. It's the original disc here. So let's just put this right in our PlayStation. This is an original SCPH 7501 PlayStation system, which, for anyone who knows much about PlayStations, it's the last model that contained the parallel port. I'm using my DualShock controller here. So we're just going to turn this right on and take a look at this game, and show you what the only American released console version of X-Men vs. Street Fighter look like. Let's just go up to the screen here. You get your classic Sony logo, and then once the PlayStation reads the disc data, it's gonna give us our PlayStation, and then we're gonna get right into this. Okay, now in the PlayStation version of X-Men vs. Street Fighter, the big thing you're going to notice a lot here is there is a lot more loading time. Screens like this where it says X-Men vs. Street Fighter now loading, you'll see a lot more often. You'll see the words now loading a lot more often. And this version of X-Men vs. Street Fighter was released February 26th of 1998 in Japan, June 11th, 1998 in North America.
X-Men versus Street Fighter! This is X-Men versus Street Fighter!
And if you notice in that intro, as opposed to the original arcade intro, it doesn't have the actual them teaming up, because sadly in this version, due to the RAM limitations of the Sony PlayStation, you actually don't have the ability to tag in and out anytime during the match. So your partner actually acts more like a striker. If you're familiar with like King of Fighters series, you'll know what I'm talking about. More or less, if you hit a certain series of buttons, they'll come in and do a quick attack, so they can attack your enemies. And all loading times you see in this video are real time. I didn't lengthen or shorten them or anything, so what you see right now is what's coming from that actual PlayStation system, the SCPH 7501 system. And now, if you haven't really played this game much, you might not notice it much, but the animation in this version of the game is a little bit like chunkier. It's lacking a lot of animation frames as compared to the arcade and the Sega Saturn version, which I'm going to show you in just a few moments. For like people who don't play games like this much, you might not really see it much, but yeah. When you're so used to the arcade version, how silky smooth it plays, you can tell the big difference here. And since it doesn't have the tag dynamic like it did in the other versions, they go for more traditional round 1, round 2 system. Which, in my opinion, just seems to make the matches just feel like they're taking a little bit longer, because you're doing this one-on-one type thing, and then you have to go into a round 2, and since you don't have the tags, it just slows the whole thing down, in my opinion. And of course, all the hyper moves and everything, and all the super combos are all still here. And you notice the same level-based super move thing, and as you saw just right there, my opponent sent Rogue in as their striker, and she did that combo. And then pretty quickly right there, I sent in Akuma, and he did an uppercut. I can honestly tell you I have no idea how I sent in Akuma. I think I just more or less hit a random series of buttons. And when it does the next match here, I want to show you something that I noticed about this version. It just strikes me as a little bit strange. You might not really think about it too much, but right here, you notice right when it goes from the selection screen to the versus screen, it kind of like cuts off the music. It's like do 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 do, and it just cuts it off. It seems like something was wrong there, like it didn't quite work right. That's what just struck me as weird when I first played this game for the longest time the other day, because I didn't notice that it did something weird like that, where it just kind of cut off its own music. And the cool part is at least the stages look pretty good in this version. They don't look horribly bad, which when I was hearing friends tell me when I was in high school that this version was like far inferior to the actually I think I was in middle school, but told me that this version was far inferior. I was thinking it was going to be a lot worse, but if all you have is a Sony PlayStation and you're not really that much into emulation, this version does stand up pretty well. I would go as far as to say it is a serviceable version, but with the lack of the tag mode and the decreased animation, and from what I've heard, I've never seen it myself, but during certain moves where there's like a lot of action, there can be a bit of slowdown now and then, which makes the game a little bit unplayable. So, for those reasons, it really takes this version down, and some critics at the time actually said this version was bad. I think one of the companies gave it like a 3.6, which, even if that's out of 5 these days, a lot of people consider that pretty bad. And consider this was a rather high-profile game at the time, you'd expect it to do a little bit better, but if all you have is a Sony PlayStation, as I said, you're not into emulation, this is a serviceable version of the game. It's still pretty fun. It's just a really step down from the arcade and everything. And, yeah, still a fun game, not as good. Let's move on to the next one. Well, the Sony PlayStation version of X-Men vs. Street Fighter, it's a pretty good game considering it was the only thing that was released here in the States. But what we're going to take a look at now is the main event, X-Men vs. Street Fighter for the Sega Saturn. And as you can see, this was only released in Japan, and this has happened to be the boxed version with the 4 meg RAM cartridge. You'll notice it's a little bit of a bigger box. It's seen a little bit better days. As you can see, the box is a little worn, but considering this was released back in 1997, that's not too bad. And as you can see, here's the reader art for the game. And let me just pull the case out here. I've already put the 4 meg RAM cartridge into my Sega Saturn over here because the cartridge slots in Sega Saturns can be a little bit temperamental, and sometimes the pins don't always quite make proper contact. But here is the case for the game, and as you can see, since the rear art was on the box, it's not on the back of the case here. So let's open this up and see. Here's the disc with Cammy, Wolverine, Cyclops, and Ryu. So let's take this out, and we're just going to put it right in our Sega Saturn. Pop the little door open here, put it right in, close it up, and of course I have my matching gray Japanese Saturn controller to go along with this. So we're just going to turn this right on. Pan up to the screen here so I can just show you what's going on. And there, of course, is the Japanese Model 1 Sega Saturn startup screen. And you'll hear the Sega Saturn madly trying to read the disc right now. There it goes. It read the boot sector. Now it comes up the Sega thing. Now you'll know if your cartridge made proper contact right now. In about a couple seconds, the screen should give the whole loading thing. If it doesn't, it'll give a warning screen that says, like, warning, your 4 meg cartridge isn't in here. Right after the Capcom logo should be our loading X-Men vs. Street Fighter type screen here that'd pop up. See, now it says now loading, so I know the cartridge made proper contact. So let's get right into this. And if you're wondering, when you see the now loading, more or less what the game is doing is it's like loading the textures and assets into the RAM cartridge so they can be easily accessible by the game. And of course, here's the intro.
X-Men versus Street Fighter! This is X-Men versus Street Fighter!
And of course, as opposed to the PlayStation version, what you'll notice there is that it was the full intro. Since this version only came out in Japan, then all the text and everything are fully in Japanese. And as I'd mentioned toward the end of the PlayStation part of this video, how it kind of cut the music off. This version does not do that, which is actually pretty good. And just in case you're wondering, this version predates all PlayStation versions, which were all released in 1998. This came out on November 27th of 1997 in Japan only. And as you can see here, this actually was the stage that I had battled in the last battle in the PlayStation version. Same stage, but honestly, in my opinion, it just looks sharper and smoother. And now, mind you, both of these consoles I had connected with composite cables to have a valid comparison. So it's not like either of them had an advantage over the others. And if you didn't notice already, I might have mentioned it, but this version does have the tag, and it doesn't have the round 1, round 2 type thing, so it is much more faithful to the arcade version. And of course, I could go over one more thing about controllers while I'm at it. The PlayStation controller, unless you get a special one, only has 4 face buttons, which just makes it not as easy to play a fighter that requires 6 buttons. So what I would usually do on the PlayStation controllers, I would remap the light punch and kick to L1 and R1, and then the mediums to square and X, and then the heavies to X and circle, because those are the most often one I use. And I think I might have mentioned this in the arcade video, but I just like when Sabretooth gives his jacket to the girls. He's like, "Here, take this." I don't know why I just like that. I think it sounds funny when he says that. And that's one thing I always found weird. My only guess is that it's a level thing, but when he does his burning and then she shoots the gun, sometimes there's only like 1 or 2 little pellets that shoots out. I'm guessing it's probably like a level 1 versus like a level 3 or a level 2. I never really got that far into it to figure how Sabretooth's burning can be more powerful or less powerful. And that's one thing I always thought was cool about X-Men versus Street Fighter as opposed to like Street Fighter 2 is how everything is just like overemphasized in the animated style. And like, for instance, you see Cammy's cannon drills become like these like blue light, which is really cool. And since I was on the topic of controllers, if you've never seen a Sega Saturn controller before, it has the full 6-button layout, so it is just a lot easier to play a fighting game that requires 6 buttons. And when it comes to the D-pad, the D-pad on the PlayStation controller is okay, but doing stuff like a Shoryuken or a cannon spike is just a lot easier with the D-pad on the Sega Saturn controller. It just seems to move in the different positions a lot easier. And of course, if you didn't notice right there, there was no load break between the your character wins and the winning quote thing. Of course, it is kind of sad that this is only released in Japan, so all the winning quotes and everything are in Japanese, but not too much of a big deal in my opinion. And one thing I always noticed when I used to play this a lot with friends is a lot of my friends liked Wolverine, but I can honestly tell you, I never played all that great with Wolverine. I always ended up doing like one or two moves over and over again, because like the other moves I couldn't find like right times to do. Like I do that, I think it's called like expected barrage or something like that. It's probably something else, and I'm probably gonna have like 80 people in the comments say it's not that, it's this. But you know, I was never a big fan of Wolverine because I just never could play him too well. And of course, if you didn't notice it already, since this is the Japanese version, it's not Akuma, it's Goki. So, and if I were to play against M. Bison, he'd be Vega, since the names are different in Japan. And I just thought that's kind of cool how Cyclops will do his like super optic blast, and Wolverine will kind of go through it and start trying to claw you like crazy. I just thought that's really cool how they blend the two very different fighting styles together like that. I always liked a lot of the voices that Cyclops did. Like he's like, yes, and he just puts his hand up, and then the other guy comes in. I don't know if I actually didn't mention it in the when I was fighting against Cyclops, not Cyclops, Sabretooth. What's funny sometimes is if it's Sabretooth and Dalcium will be like yoga, 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 and then all of a sudden, what's his name? Sabretooth would be tagged in, and it'll be like yoga dies, cause like Sabretooth like yell dies, and it sounds like he hates like yoga or something. And if you'd notice right then, after you do your win pose, if you press the start button, your character can freely move, and they can actually start beating up your knocked out opponent, which is kind of a weird little code, but it's actually pretty fun. Like, you're more or less like, you're dead, and now I'm gonna beat up your corpse. I'm just gonna beat you up. You're knocked out and you're all over the floor, but I'm gonna just start kicking you. It's fun. And here's our over-animated Zangief again. I never really understood the whole tech hit thing. I guess it's kind of cool that you escaped from a move, but I thought it was weird to call it a tech hit. And as I'd mentioned in the arcade review, if you look in the background there, you can see Blanca clearly kind of like bent over. And there are a few subtle cues here and there in a lot of the different stages in this game, so if you look carefully, you can find, like, there's a character standing here, a character sitting there, and I think it's really cool when they do that. It kind of reminds me of Final Fight, one of the Final Fight games. There was, like, Chun-Li sitting in the background. I think that was Final Fight 2. I just like how they put subtle little hints there, and I think it's always really cool when you have a character who's not in the game just kind of make, like, a guest appearance like that. And I believe I did mention the arcade version, but as I said, Juggernaut always looked really scary in this game because he's just so humongous, and he just has a lot of those moves which like do devastating looking damage. And I probably say this in every video where I have Zangief, and I probably said it in the other video, but Zangief just always scared me because he always does these creepy moves where he grabs your character, and it just always was like, oh man, that's just creepy. And that's another thing you'll notice as well. There's the load breaks between the versus screen and the selection screen are now gone as well. And between the versus screen and the fighting, there no longer is that where it closes and it says now loading for about like 2 minutes, and then it actually comes to the thing. It's like 20 seconds, 15 seconds in this version. It's just so smooth. You would almost think to yourself that it's not running off of the optical disc, and you'd think, oh wow, this is amazing, which it really is in my opinion. And I always thought Gambit was a really cool character, especially like in the Sega Genesis X-Men game. I used to play as him all the time. Although I never really did too well with his throwing the card thing in that, because it just kind of went back and forth. And of course, here you have the battle of the Shoryukens and Hadoukens and everything with Goki versus Ken Masters here. And if you notice what Ken Masters is doing right there, that's kind of the thing he was doing when I versed him in one of my practice runs in the arcade version. But he did it worse than he's doing it there. He basically just only move he did was Shoryuken. There's the Shoryuken. That's the Shoryuken that you were looking for. I just love how it's so easy to do the moves in this game. That's really cool. Well, bottom line with this version, almost arcade perfect. Highly recommended if you have a Sega Saturn. It's one of the best fighting games in the system, in my opinion. And it really is worth your time, and it's a really fun game to play. So, let's move on to my conclusion. Dieked.
Well, that was the Sega Saturn version of X-Men vs. Street Fighter, but at the end of the day, no matter which way you slice it, X-Men vs. Street Fighter is a great game on the arcade or on the console. And of course, it goes pretty much without saying that I like the Sega Saturn version better because, of course, it has the full tag team mode intact. The graphics are just slightly smoother, better animations, and it just looks better. Plus, you just gotta love how the Sega Saturn versions of games look. I just love the art on this. It's really nice. Although the PlayStation version is pretty cool too, as you can see on the screen here right now, the art for the PlayStation version, since I don't have that one. I just like the Sega Saturn version better in just about all aspects. The only sad part about it is, unlike some of the SNK fighting games, which actually translate into English when you put them on the Sega Saturn, this stays in Japanese, but then again, it's a fighting game, so all you're really going to be missing is, I just beat you, you're the worst fighter in the world, Akuma is Super Omega Devil guy, you know, but it's still a great fighting game. Highly recommended. If you have a Sega Saturn, especially a Japanese one, get this game. If you don't have a Japanese Sega Saturn, you're going to have to get one of those third-party multi-carts, which serves as a conversion cartridge and also serves as a 4 meg RAM cart. Only problem is, as I've stressed in numerous of my videos, unlike the official one right here, the PCB in the actual card is a little bit bigger, which can cause your cartridge slot to get stretched out and not work after a while. Well, this has been another Game Nexus video, and I shall see you later. Bye.